I've got no doubt that's why we're there, that's why we're employed, to represent the interests of the business and drive performance. I appreciate that's sometimes different in the NGOs, public sectors, in a different way. So number one is the business acumen. Certainly in my days in Marks and Spencer's, you know, it was very tempted sometimes to be closeted at Baker Street in the head office. But actually, we sold stuff. That's what we did. And therefore, it was really important to, you know, go out there, talk to people, go to the shop floor. Every Christmas, we had to spend a week there because Christmas was our peak. And it was important as HR to support the business in what they were doing to deliver the Christmas season particularly. So if we had to recruit thousands of temporaries over that time, that's what we did. And we geared up very early to support the business. From August, September, we were already advertising, thinking about temporary staff who'd worked with us before. So it's very important to work very closely with the business. And that's an example from those days. Now, as a consultant, the approach that we take in our organisation is before we do any piece of work, whether it be organisational design, job evaluation, performance management, all the training stuff that was mentioned, before we even think about solutions, we go in to talk to the business. We interview the CEOs, we have the privilege of talking to the top teams and really understanding what the business is about. We were working with a retailer recently, and it was great because Asma's background is a lot of aviation work. I come from this retailing background. But Asma got so excited, it was great to see, you know, great to see her really understand what retailing is about. So very, very important. In terms of strategic thinking, you know, it's about how do we contribute to that strategy? Are we there leading that strategy for the business? And also, we can't forget the numbers. I'm thinking about the strategic stuff, and this is what Asma was saying yesterday. You know, she said, didn't she? Every day when we were at Adat in Abu Dhabi, you know, HR was the #1 topic, because we made sure that we were there driving and delivering. Every day at that senior team meeting, you know, HR was on the agenda because of what the business needed. And that's what the business, where the business was at that time. I put here the numbers, and I think numbers are important. And impact is important. And I'm thinking about, I was in Oman last week with a client, and we were talking about performance management. And we were talking about all of the good stuff about performance management, you know, about the cycle, and should you review, and should you not, and the ratings. And we had a great conversation, and we're working very collaboratively with the HR team there. And I think one of the things that we talked about was that, you know, really what we mentioned was that they forgot to talk about performance. You know, we probably spoke for about half an hour, and we didn't talk about actual performance, because that's what performance management is about. You know, we sort of seem to get sidetracked around delivering stuff. As I say, there's nothing here in order. I was thinking about building relationships. How can you operate anywhere without having good relationships? And I've also put there internal consultancy. And going back to my M&S days, you know, they wanted us to be an advisor. You know, that's what they wanted. That's what the line wanted from us. That's what the senior teams wanted. And also there you can see HR law. In the UK, when I still talk to my HR colleagues, because of the complexity of the law, you know, every student I think I came across was always concerned about the HR law. And at the bottom there, you have integrity, the fundamentals. We have to act with integrity. You know, we have to be transparent and open. We have to be consistent and fair in our approach.
Sarah, I have a question here.
Sure.
Capacity building is required for HR professionals to understand the numbers right, because you know, what has been your experience in actually developing their capacity? Most of the time we have seen that the financial acumen is not that you know, up to the mark when it comes to the HR. Well, they will their headache anymore.
Yep.
Other than few parameters such as turnover
It's interesting because I was very tempted there, if I go back, to put financial acumen, and you'll notice I didn't, because I think at different levels, it does depend. I know when I was doing my MBA, I was the only HR person on that course out of 40 people, which I thought was really interesting in itself. That's going back to 2006, sort of 4, that sort of time. So it was interesting, actually, even HR wasn't coming to do those types of courses in the UK and focusing on, the CIPD type program, which was interesting, in terms of where you may get that kind of capability. So I think we have to ask our financial experts around how they can help us as we help them. So we look to support across the business when we're dealing with finance. And I think also about putting the measures in place that HR can then demonstrate that value. I think that's very important. So being aware of our own measures, even if we can't yet grasp those business measures. But I think the basics are HR measures, finance measures in terms of the business dashboard, how the business is reporting every week, being crucial.
So is dashboard being applied now very frequently, very commonly in the UAE market?
I think from a business perspective, we're seeing that with our retailer. Interesting, with our retailer, they had so many, it's the nature of the business, isn't it? They have so many figures and things and measurements, and that they can get that information very easily. There are other clients which were less able to do that. The airport was turnaround time. I've got the plane in, and the plane needs to go out. That was obviously, you had to understand those concepts to be able to do that. I'm conscious of time, so thank you for that. Good point. And I just wanted to end on a couple of things, and that was to think about, what does HR think? So this was a poll that the CIPD did last year to say, okay, so what competencies are believed to be the most important in establishing an effective HR and credible, that word there again. So the top 3 we had are effective management of change, business knowledge, and strategic thinking. So this is what HR said about HR. Interesting, when the Ulrich data was done, they asked the line managers. So I think that gives a different perspective, doesn't it? This is what they said. So roughly, I think 350 people answered this poll last year. So what they said was change, which came out yesterday from our CEOs, strategic thinking, and the business knowledge. Okay. So the choices you also had, if I just go back, I've written them out because I'm conscious the graph wasn't that clear. So things like creativity, organizational design, which if we go to, it was only 3% of people said organizational design was important. And that's interesting, I think, because obviously that's one of our technical skills, which is very, very good. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions, actually. So we've sort of gone through a journey of, my gosh, there's a big context, a big global village out there that we're operating in. And then we've said, okay, what are a couple of people saying in that village about what HR competencies should look like? I've shared a couple of my thoughts, and they're here. We've also got some from the HR team as well. I'm interested, just a hands up. I want you to pick from these 3 here, because it's all about priorities, and I want you to think about your own organisation now. Think about your own organisation, think about your HR competencies, your capabilities. Out of this 3, which is your number 1? Yeah. So let's think. So if I get a show of hands, so for you, in your role, is it about change? Or is it about business knowledge? Or is it about strategic thinking? So who thinks change for them is that capability, that competence they need? Anyone? So we've got, yeah, interesting. So a few people there saying change. How about business knowledge? It's probably where I would start at personally. And that's not right or wrong on that. That's just a personal view. So a few more there for business. And how about strategic thinking? This idea to Fantastic. So it seems to be the strategic thinking, I mean, they're all sort of pretty much the same, probably a bit like the response in the poll, but, you know, strategic thinking, being able to think about the future, but also being able to contribute to that future in an effective way.
You can't have strategic thinking if you don't have the right business knowledge. They're all connected.
I think, yes, that's exactly why I was going for business knowledge as well. But I can also see, you know, the connections between. Okay. Finally, to leave you with something, I think, you know, thinking about that gap, thinking about, you know, we aspire to the Ulrichs and the CIPDs of the world, you know, we aspire to be credible activists, you know, we need to be credible activists. And I just want you to think about, you know, where you now are as an HR team in terms of your own competencies and capabilities, your skills and your knowledge. And, you know, a couple of questions, you know, do you know your customer? Do you know where the business is heading, going back to strategy? Do you have the basics in place, the transactional stuff? Really important, and this is something that I've seen in the UAE, is what does good look like? We talk about competencies being about what is the best, the highest standard? Where are we going for? Do you know, does your HR team know where this good is for them? Where is this best fit for them right now, or for you right now? Do you have the technical knowledge? You may know it, but can you apply it? You know, we said at the beginning that every situation can be different. And, you know, going back to a theme from yesterday, are you adding value? You know, how are you adding value? Can you put a number to it? You know, not just that gut feel, yeah, people are happy and motivated. But actually, they probably are, but how are you going to measure that? And what difference does that make to the business and the figures? What are your strengths, both as an individual and as a department? And how can you balance across all of those different roles and competencies? And then finally, we have, what can you do differently? We can always do something differently. And that's the trainer in me, isn't it? You know, we can always do something differently. And it's about being cognizant and making sure that we think about that. How can we change so we can deliver on those competencies and we can deliver on for HR for the business, whatever that looks like for that business. So thank you. A quick go through some slides there. And any thoughts from anyone? Any thoughts? Yeah, of course. Let me take these.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah and Kesser. I believe a good first session of a lot of exercises and wisdom and knowledge traveled to you. And I see a lot of people still waking up. That's a good thing, because this session and the session after lunch really requires something really energetic. Two good things. Kesser talked about explore yourself. That was the best thing, a part what I picked from it, which I think everything starts from there. And then Sarah talked about credible activist. I think it's a beautiful term for an HR person. Credible activist, सब चल जाएगा उसके बाद. All will work through that. All policy, procedures, strategy, things will come around and go around. Just a quick question answer session. If any one of you have, then we have to go for the tea. Ji, please. Any questions for Sarah and Kesser? Yes, great. Can I have a mic? Asma has a question. Either, please.
Thank you. Kesser, I have a question for you. Particularly, I think it's very relevant to us. When we're doing team building events and things like this, the cultural differences, you can't just pick up practices and exercises and things like that, perhaps I was doing in the UK, and impose them, say, in the UAE, for example, or for here, for that matter, because there are cultural differences, there are diversity differences, etc. Particularly here today, even with the small exercises that we did, there was the gender differences that perhaps might have got in the way. How do you then work around those here, particularly in Pakistan? I'd like to understand.
Thank you. The most important thing is that there are two types of team building sessions. One is the team building by chance, and the other is team building by design. So I strongly recommend that prior to conducting a team building session, and by the way, team building is not the solution to everything that happens to an organization. So many a times clients have come up to us to run a team building session, and we did the analysis, which is the real strength So prior to doing any team building session, we run series of analysis. So that includes, for instance, meeting with the top management, taking the feedback from the chief executive himself,